Thank you for joining us today. I'm Amanda Peterson, Communications and Volunteer Coordinator with Calvert Hospice, and I'm proud to say that today I'm with Margaret Phipps, Register of Wills for Calvert County. She's going to be giving us a presentation today on wills and estate planning. Margaret, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. I'm delighted to be here with you and to be able to explain, and hope some of the folks out there in the hospice territory will be able to learn something this and plan for their estates and whatnot. And then I must tell you this, though. Pardon me for using my fingers. I talk.
That's okay.
I cannot give legal advice, but I have to know the law to be able to help the people. So anything I say today is not legal advice. It's just advice to help people ask questions and prepare and try to get their affairs in order.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to start with some questions that
Okay.
you and I have worked on. My first question for you is, why do people need a will?
A will can serve many purposes. It can transfer your property to the people that you want to have it. You appoint a personal representative, which used to be the old, what people knew as an executor, administrator. You can give gifts to charitable organizations. You can set up guardianships for children if you don't already have one. You can give gifts to certain people. It gives you the opportunity to be in control of your assets when you're not able to be here.
Right, right. Very good. And can you prepare your own will?
Yes, there's nothing in Maryland law that says you can't.
Okay.
I don't recommend it, to be quite honest, and that's my honest opinion. I have seen wills that people have prepared that are good in some areas, but not so great in others. Interpretation in a will is so important. Have you ever asked someone something and told someone something and meant one thing and they thought you meant something else?
All the time.
I've seen it happen in wills. I've seen it happen in wills. And you're not here to say, that's not what I wanted.
Right.
That will is so final. So you want to be sure that you have a little bit of help to get that done so that it is proper. Now, there are lots of forms out there on the website, and a lot of people use them. But in some cases they work. But I've seen cases they haven't. It makes me a little leery
Okay.
for the best for the individuals.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. So what are some of the things that a will controls?
A will controls only the property or the assets that you have in your name alone, or if you are a tenant in common with someone else. For instance, your mother died and left you and your brother her real estate. You have a 1/2 interest and he has a 1/2 interest. That's what we call tenants in common. Now that is an asset of yours if something happens to you. So it's what's in your name alone.
Okay.
It does not control many other things. Would you like me to mention those?
Please do.
Okay. There are many other ways that you can own property or bank accounts and whatnot that your will can't control. If you have a joint account with someone, it goes to the joint owner.
Okay.
Joint bank account. You can have a payable on death, POD accounts they call it. You can have a TOD, transfer on death account.
Okay.
There's so many other ways of property can be distributed, and the will doesn't control it. I have seen a will that had left an acre of land to a son, and when we probated the will, the acre of land didn't belong to the decedent. A year before she died, she had deeded it to another person.
Okay.
So only what they had still in their name alone
Right.
does the will control? And that's a great misunderstanding among people sometimes.
Right. That's important information to
Uh,
understand.
it's a lot to understand, and there are a lot of ways that it affects a
Mm-hmm.
will and how you distribute your property.
Right. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of going along with that, should people include letters regarding personal property in their will?
If someone wants to use a letter of instructions on what personal property they want to go to certain
Mm-hmm.
people, they should acknowledge it in the will. That says my personal representative has a copy of my instructions for this and that.
Okay.
And that can be included. They have to acknowledge it in the will for it to be recognized.
Oh, okay. So you can't just write a letter and tuck it away and have somebody find it later
No, it
and
should be
expect
acknowledged
that.
in the will to be
Mm-hmm.
able to be handled that way.
Okay.
But you know what? If sometimes people have jewelry,
Mm-hmm.
they have antique furniture, things that are very special to them
Right.
that they want a certain person to have,
Mm-hmm.
they can put it in a will or they can put it in a letter of instructions for the personal representative acknowledged by the will. But those types of things cause more problems than anything
Right.
anything you can think of.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think, and I've seen from my experience, that if people can and they want a certain person to have something, they ought to give it to them while they're living.
Okay.
Watch them enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, example, I have a cross that I wear every day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not giving that to anybody yet.
Mm-hmm.
But um, if I had something that was a piece of jewelry that was a nice piece that I
Right.
wanted one of my grandchildren to have,
Mm-hmm.
I should go ahead and give it to them now,
Right.
because things like that create more problems. Sometimes when someone is beginning to fail a little as they age,
Mm-hmm.
um, they've made a will and said what they wanted, but then they begin to tell this one they can have that, and tell this another child they can have the same thing,
Right.
and
Right.
then you get the arguments.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I come from this point that if you want them to have it, you're not using it, give it to them.
Right. Makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Yes. So I know a question you said commonly comes up is an out of state will good in Maryland?
Yes, provided it is executed according to the laws of the state that you were living in at the time of execution.
Okay.
Maryland does accept those wills. However, I must warn people that there are many other states that are not that lenient.
Okay.
So if you move to another state with a Maryland will,
Mm-hmm.
you really should check with an attorney or the probate court. Or very few states have registers of wills.
Okay.
They have a probate court.
Okay. Gotcha.
If you're coming into Maryland, it should be good. It's still wise to have it checked to be sure.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And what are some of the changes in your life that should cause you to change your will?
Um, a will should be reviewed at least every 10 years. But if there's a divorce, a death, maybe some people like to specifically leave things to grandchildren.
Okay.
If you have more grandchildren,
Mm-hmm.
there are a number of circumstances like that that might cause you to change your will.
Okay.
But it is something you really should follow up on.
Right. And you can't just write it once and say, okay, I'm done.
Well,
I don't have
most
to
people
touch
do.
that again. Right.
we're
But they shouldn't,
we're
right?
probating wills from 79 and 89,
Wow.
and sometimes it's okay,
Right.
but if there is a major, now a divorce, it automatically affects the will, and
Mm-hmm.
there's laws to that.
Okay.
But it's wise, if there
Mm-hmm.
is a divorce, to redo your will and get things in order.
Right. Okay.
Remarriage,
Right.
It's another.
Okay. So you said too that a lot of people ask about trusts. So is that something you can explain for us?
I don't really deal with trust, but I know about trust a little bit because there are a lot of people that are being told they have to have a trust. Here again, I can't give you legal advice, but trusts aren't always necessary. If someone has a large estate, you know, a trust isn't a planning tool.
Okay.
If you have real estate in another state, a trust will help you to expedite the transfer of the property in that state. And sometimes there's a need for special needs trust. And certain other things. There are cases where it's a very useful tool. Everybody has to have a will, even if you have a trust.
Okay.
Even a good trust will have a pour over will in it, so that if anything wasn't put in the trust, the will would pick it up and take care of it.
Okay.
So it's a useful planning tool, but it's not something you have to have. Whereas a will is, you really should.
Okay. We'll say have to, in your opinion. So what happens when a person has been married more than once?
That can create problems if you don't do the proper planning. I will give you an example. That's the best way I know to start off with that. Say A is the husband, B is the wife. They have 3 children. A dies. And so they own everything they own together. So it automatically went to the wife. Didn't even have to do an estate. Their names were on everything together. So the wife now owns everything. And so if something happened to her then, it would go to her children, their children. She remarries. And they really have a good marriage. And the children, everybody's happy. And she puts his name on the real estate. And then she dies. It automatically goes to him.
Right.
And if they haven't had estate planning and done other things, she has cut her 3 children out of receiving anything. There are ways to work that. But people need to, if there's more than a single marriage, or second or third, they really need to get some estate planning and some information on what can really happen. Can be unfortunate consequences.
Right. Well, and that kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, those life changes that
Yes,
would require another look at the will.
exactly. Yes.
So, are there other ways to distribute your assets other than a will or a trust?
A lot of people do a lot of that. We have a number of small estates that's $50,000 and under because people have done that sort of thing. Joint bank accounts with rights of survivorship, and you're payable on death, your beneficiaries. Insurance policies are not involved in estates in any way.
Okay.
They automatically go to the beneficiaries.
Okay.
If there's no beneficiary, it comes into the estate.
Okay.
One example of that is that the husband left his wife as his beneficiary on his insurance policy. He dies. She has not had time or hasn't done the act of changing the beneficiary, and then she dies. It's in her estate.
Okay.
So if you have named beneficiaries and own things jointly and whatnot, you can keep those out of the estate.
Okay. And the reason for that makes it easier at the time of death for things to be distributed? Is that why you would?
Well, that would automatically go to the owners, to the surviving owners, as those accounts are set up.
Okay. Thank you. So, you are the Register of Wills for Calvert County. What does the Register of Wills do?
Well, all of these things we watch over.
Which is a lot.
The register actually is charged with the administration of all of the estates.
Okay.
There's one in each county and one in Baltimore City. And we're charged with the administration, opening estates. We actually can appoint people as personal representatives.
Okay, so that's if someone hasn't done that themselves?
No, we have
Or-
to appoint.
Okay.
If you have a will, that brings another point. You need a will, but a will is only a paper writing until it's probated. And to probate a will, you have to come to the Register of Wills and file certain papers, be appointed, and we file a notice in the newspaper. And that makes it an official, proves it's genuine, and it's witnessed properly, executed properly. We can, then it's a probated will, and then we follow the terms of that will. And then the register has the responsibility of seeing that those papers are done and filed properly. An inventory is filed within 90 days.
Okay.
And then within 9 months, the personal representative has to file an accounting. And they have to show all the assets they've marshaled. They show any refunds, income during the estate. And they have to pay the bills. And sometimes they get complicated because there are claims and extra debts out there, and they are responsible to get everything taken care of. And then that accounting shows that. The registrar's office is responsible for auditing that.
Okay.
And then from there it goes to the court for approval. So we have quite a tickler system to keep track of these time limits.
Right.
Try to keep everybody on board. So it keeps us busy.
It sounds like it. You have a big job.
We love it.
That's good. It's important work, I think.
I think so.
So also, what does the Orphans Court do, and how is that connected with the Register of Wills?
The Orphans Court is a court of limited jurisdiction. They have to approve all of the accountings that are in estates. We audit, they approve. If we have questions with the audit that we can't work out with the people or the attorney, we send them in and they, work on it. If there's ever a dispute in an estate, it goes immediately into the court.
Okay.
They're there to settle disputes, disagreements, problems.
Okay.
That's what they're there for. The Orphans Court comes in 1 day a week in Calvert County. They're usually there on Tuesday mornings. And we are usually able to get all of our work done. Then, when the court's in session, the register's the clerk to the court. So I have a person in there recording any hearings, or anything. Routine work we don't record. We have an agenda and we keep track of it that way.
Okay. Great.
But-
It sounds like there's a lot more to this than a lot of people probably understand.
People have no idea. The average person has not a clue what we do until they need us.
Right.
And we're there for them when they need us and try to work them through the best we can.
Right.
Yeah, we try to make a hard job easy as we can, because when you lose a loved one, you're going through probably one of the most dramatic times in your life.
Right.
And at that time, that's why we want you to have a will, so that it says who's going to be personal representative, so the family doesn't have to make that decision.
Right.
Because at that time, people are distraught, and they aren't always thinking maybe as they would like to. And so if the will's done, and that first initial step has been taken care of so that we can abide by that and move forward, that it makes it a little easier.
Right.
But then I spend a lot of time talking with families. Sometimes a lot of families get along well. A lot of families aren't that fortunate. And sometimes they don't quite understand what this one or that one is doing.
Right.
And so they want to talk about it, and we can shut the door, talk, and try to help them understand the process, how it works, and all, to try to make things a little easier for them.
Right, right.
We have to abide by the law, and sometimes that's hard. And sometimes they get very upset with us. But it's part of the job.
Right, right. Well, thank you. So we kind of touched on this, but what are the duties of the personal representative?
The personal representative is fiduciary. So they've got to keep track of every penny in that estate.
Okay.
So they have the responsibility, example, if there's real estate, to have the property appraised, to have the household contents appraised, anything that decedent owned in his or her name alone. They have to get it appraised and marshal any other assets that they may be able to find, any bank accounts that are in the individual name alone and whatnot. Get them together and then keep track of that, accept all of the bills and things that are coming in, change the mail to them so they can receive the mail and see what's happening. Open a state bank account. They get an EIN number because since 9/11, the banks have been much stricter on monies that have been handled. And so now a personal representative must get an EIN number, open their state bank account, and any monies that come into the bank, into the estate, have to go in that estate account.
Okay.
And any accounts that were in the bank or investments would operate the same way, must be put in that account.
Okay.
So they keep track of it. And they have to account for every penny in and out when we audit.
Okay, so it's a large responsibility.
It can be.
Okay.
Yes, it can be. There are some smaller estates that flow very easily, and there are some very complicated ones.
I can imagine. You probably have many stories.
I could write a book, but I won't.
Bet you could.
I would always be afraid somebody would think I was talking about them, and I would never want that to happen.
So my last question for you today is, do you have a website where people can go to learn more about wills and estates and what they need to do?
We do. We do. I kind of think it's a pretty neat website. We're going to reshape it a little bit because, you have to change a little with the times,
Right.
but there's so much information on that. It's www.registers, registers, .maryland spelled out, .gov. And when you go on that, there's a map of Maryland on there. If you had Calvert County, we come up. Actually, you see my picture. Not that you need to look at that. But there's a black bar across the center of that page. It says Office of Registers of Wills at the top. And there in the middle of it, it's forms. And if you go down, it's all the forms we have. And then we have packets for regular estates over 50,000 and packets for small estates under 50. They're fillable, printable forms.
Wonderful.
And then to the left of that forms in the middle is called publications. There is a publication on there that is Administration of Estates in Maryland. It comes out like this, and there's so much information on this.
Okay.
And there's also information there on trust, the do's and don'ts and yes and no's of trust.
Okay.
So you can get a lot of information off of there.
Okay. Well, and we're going to put a link to that in our video.
Good.
So you'll have a link at the end of this video, and then we'll also include a link to that on our website. So
Oh,
that
that's
people can go
great.
to the site directly after watching the video.
Great. And I'm there just about every day. Once in a great while I'll take off, but I don't take off a lot of time. So anybody that wants to call me, I might not, if I can't answer when they call, I do reply to my calls. Might take me a day or so, but I do reply to anybody that calls. So if they have questions, I'm always available.
Okay, wonderful. And we'll include your phone number at the end
Perfect.
of the video as
Perfect.
well so that people know how to find you.
That would be good. That would be good because we're there to try to serve the people and help them.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me today.
I appreciate it. I've enjoyed it.
Me too. And I have some additional resources here that Margaret has provided for us. They will be posted on our website, and we'll also include pictures at the end of the video so you know what you're looking for. Thank you so much for joining us today.